Hi, everybody. Welcome to 228 this week. This week we're on week 5. 2 assignments this week, Chapter 7 quiz and Chapter 8 quiz. So just quizzes only this week for you to take a look at. Previously, other weeks, please make sure you are getting in these assignments. I have until October 21st to complete the assignments for the first half of the semester. If you need help or have questions on them, please reach out and let me know. 21st will be coming up rather quickly, right? This is the last week of September before we get into October here. So as you can see, you have about 4 more weeks for assignments to be completed for the first half of the semester before we're at midterm already. So this week I will briefly go over each chapter here in the PowerPoints to explain a little bit more on each of the chapters and help you hopefully along with those quizzes. Let me move this up here. Let me readjust. And then we can begin. So chapter 7 is about developing dramatic play centers. So a center or an area in your early childhood classroom that you will have, probably most definitely, will be a dramatic play area. So this chapter covers the ways and the ideas and some of the thoughts behind putting those together. Dramatic play center enhances children's literacy, cognitive, social, emotional, self-regulation, and creative skills. So a lot of skills that children need, that children have to develop, can be enhanced in the dramatic play area. Children engage in different types of social categories of play. Okay, so we talked about previously in other chapters, there's solitary play, right, by themselves, parallel play, where they're playing alongside somebody but not together, associative play, where they're kind of sharing back and forth a little bit, and then sociodramatic play, where they're doing like make-believe or inventing creative type play. So these used to be thought of as stages of play. Experts now state that children often use multiple types of play even within one episode of playing together. So there are also cognitive theories of play, including functional, constructive, sociodramatic, and games with rules. So Vygotsky, for example, who hopefully you've heard of before, but Vygotsky is an educational theorist. He considered play, and Vygotsky is from the 1800s, and so long time ago. He considered dramatic play to be an ideal arena for learning self-regulation, say, for a child to regulate their thoughts, their emotions, their behaviors, their reactions, etc. It's a highly motivating activity to practice rule-bound behavior. The imaginary situations help children separate their thoughts and behaviors from what's going on around them. And then the imaginary situation also helps children to use their internal ideas to help guide their various behaviors. So these 3 things that Vygotsky has talked about years ago are also things that researchers are understanding to be a little bit more true today as well. Okay? So sociodramatic play, pretend play, whatever you might want to call it, definitely has a place in the early childhood classroom to help children develop a variety of skills. So when we start developing these areas, these centers, a couple things here to think of and consider. Children under the age of 2 need realistic objects for pretending. They don't have that imagination quite developed yet. About age of 2, children begin to use less real objects, while an item might be a symbolic representation of something else. So there's at age 2, a little bit after, they're starting to use that imagination and do some symbolism within their play and with objects. By the age of 3, most children are capable of pretending with imaginary objects and events, even when props are not available. And when they become preschoolers, they begin to engage more in sociodramatic play, and their imagination continues to grow and develop in that setting. Okay? So to be considered sociodramatic play, children must engage in role-playing pretend situations. For example, pretend to be another person, somebody's an animal, use an object differently than what it is intended for. They have to use make-believe with actions and objects, have verbal and social interactions with at least one other person to coordinate the roles and the plot of what they're doing, what they're playing, and then have a play theme that persists for 5 minutes or more. Okay, so there are some technical pieces, right, to what sociodramatic play is and what it might look like. Just so for us to know what that dramatic play or sociodramatic play is there with that. The Dramatic Play Center enhances children's literacy skills as well, okay? Self-regulation, cognition, social emotional development, creativity, as I kind of touched on. And it does lead to greater intellectual competence, creativity, and problem solving, okay? And it can also assist in meeting certain standards that we might be teaching to as kindergarten, first grade, second grade instructors as well. And so the sociodramatic play research indicates it has, besides just play, and that's what we talk about, play is linked to learning. It has a lot of opportunities to develop cognitive skills, academic skills with that as well. Okay? So an effective play center is aesthetic. Okay? Aesthetic, of course, means that it is pleasing to our eye, right? It is located in a well-defined area of the classroom with sufficient space, looking for 4 to 6 kids or children to play. And so it's often located next to the block center to increase the movement of materials between the two areas. Contains familiar and authentic materials that allow children to represent their experiences. The materials do reflect all members of the classroom and represent many cultures as well. Cultures that are reflective of your students and also other cultures that the students should be able to learn about. Should be a variety of props in there, including duplicates of popular items, right? So if you have one item that is very popular that kids like to play with, have multiple ones if you can, so there's not an issue of fighting over it or sharing or less time with it. If you can have multiple ones of popular objects, it's good to include that. Math props, literacy props, loose parts, so children can create their own props, other needed equipment that you may know that children will use, or as you see children playing and their creativity expands or they go a different direction, that you might include in there as well. So that's one thing with the centers that you want to pay attention to is where are the children leading that to, right? That they have, if they're going a certain direction of with their interest, you want to try to capitalize on that and bring in some play pieces, some equipment, some material that will help them along that way. There is a way of displaying and organizing the clothing and props, so it's not just piled into like a tote. As we used to do with our kids for costumes and different things that they would play with. We just piled it into a tote because it was easy for us. But what is a way that you can display it so children can see what's there, what's available, what they can use? And the center should also be dynamic and changing as needed to sustain rich play opportunities. I kind of touched on that, right? That if there is a new route that the kids are or a new path that the kids are going down, how can we capitalize upon that? You also do not want to have the same thing for a long period of time, right? You need to exchange those out, even if kids are not leading it down a certain path. Sometimes we as teachers have to be the catalyst for change a little bit and bring in some new material for those centers. Okay? Inviting and aesthetic, right? I talked about that. Something to look at, something that's important, catches their eye. They want to be there. They want to play with it. And so this is an example of a menu, right, in a play area that can add literacy to the area. So this just requires children to do a little bit of reading. There's some numbers in there, so reading numbers, all these different components, right? So there's a lot of different ways you can use literacy props within your centers to get kids to work on their literacy skills. Okay? Now, for preschool kids, they may not be reading this, right? But they're starting to put together pictures, right? Maybe they understand what a pizza looks like, so that they're connecting this picture with this word and these letters components right here. So it's part of that process. Exposure, experience with words, with literacy is definitely important. There's lots of different things that we can do with that. So obviously we know that this is a kitchen or restaurant type center that might include a menu. So as soon as children begin to walk, they need an area devoted to dramatic play. Okay? Toddlers need familiar centers, realistic props, and it's important to provide duplicate items to encourage parallel play and decrease conflict when providing dramatic play for toddlers. And so as soon as they can walk, they should hopefully we should have some centers for them, realistic objects, things that they are familiar with, that they can start playing with. And this is a big one here. Toddlers are not the best with sharing, right? They don't understand that concept quite yet. So multiple items in there is good. Parallel play is also good as well for this, because they can see others playing with an object, and maybe they're not sure how to play with an object or a prop, and they see others playing with it. They understand how that works. They can jump right in with that as well. And so in this classroom here, the teachers combine the media table and dramatic play area to enhance play possibilities. Okay, so sometimes it's a matter of combining things together to add that experience with play and change that experience up a little bit. So as kids get into school age, these school age children continue to participate in socio-dramatic play, often reenacting stories or events, movies, their own narratives or experiences. And the dramatic play center may become a stage or a puppet theater to encourage these reenactments. So different ways for children to reenact the things that have happened, that they've seen, that they've experienced. Okay? Outdoor dramatic play is also a good opportunity for kids to engage. Doesn't always have to necessarily be indoor. We are often limited, right? Sometimes in our area based upon the weather in terms of what we can do outside, but it is another great way or opportunity to enrich the play and enrich the experience of the children when we go outside as well. Changing the dramatic play center, which is important, allows children to experiment with new roles, explore new scenarios, and use additional vocabulary. So children can assist in planning and making the changes. This here again goes back to what I talked about children experiences and interests and leading us down maybe a different path or road that they're interested in that maybe we didn't think about. As you become more experienced with centers and kids' interests and ideas, that will become a little easier for you to create centers, to change them, and to get them set up. Our job as facilitating learning in the dramatic play area is important, though. We don't just set up the dramatic play area and then sit back and not be engaged. We have to set some parameters and be engaged with that. So we as teachers should facilitate learning in the dramatic play area through providing rich shared experiences, planning centers that encourage active engagement, right, with each other, actively involved, building excitement, keeping interest alive through providing a dynamic center, meaning we have multiple things happening within that center. It's not just one thing. Provide adequate time for dramatic play, right? If we just give 15 minutes for dramatic play, probably not a lot is going to happen. It takes sometimes it takes time for children to gather their thoughts, put information together, get ideas, decide who's going to do what, etc. I lost my spot on my notes. Introducing materials, teaching mini lessons as needed, right? We might have to teach children a little bit in terms of how to use material, what to do with it, why it's important, how it connects to that center. Extend playtime if needed. Assist individual children to join or sustain dramatic play episodes. Sometimes children do not understand how to join groups. They do not understand or know yet how to be involved or how to keep things going. as their imagination grows and develops in their ability to like make up stories or think of things. It's hard for some kids or people to do that right away, but for us as teachers, we have to help them along that process. Enrich the dramatic play by incorporating materials from other centers, such as we had in that picture back there a little bit ago, where they combined a couple centers to enhance that. Facilitate children acting out of their fears and meeting the needs of all learners, and observing and documenting individual children's learning. So again, this is not just playtime, but this is a time for us to observe and document their learning, their growth, their skill development in all those areas that we talked about earlier in the chapter here at the PowerPoint: the cognitive, the social, the emotional, behavioral, etc. Adding crowns to this with this large unit blocks encourages children to build a castle for their dramatic play area. Okay? So by adding things in here, we might suggest that, even without saying anything, that maybe the children didn't think about. So these are larger blocks here, right? So this one example is talking about building a castle and using that. So there might be girl crowns or boy crowns or different things like that. So. Superhero and war play is often a concern for teachers, right? Because of maybe sometimes the I don't want to say violence or the aggressive play, maybe that goes into it, right? However, it often does not work to ban this type of play. In addition, superhero and war play is important that children be allowed to feel powerful and to face their fears. There are many strategies that successful teachers use to manage this type of play, including focusing on real life heroes. And so when we have this superhero or aggressive type play, we definitely want to manage it and monitor it to make sure it's not that someone is being too powerful, or that is there are issues coming up through this aggressive maybe type of play. Okay, and so you can regulate that. You can lay some ground rules to that. If those rules get broken, it's easily something that you can take a moment to reteach, have the kids relearn the expectations or the rules that you have for that. So if you focus on real life heroes, whoever that may be, it might be some local people, it might be something statewide, national, whatever it might be, that maybe helps with that. You know that young children are going to be watching cartoons and different kind of animated movies or whatever it might be, and so they might have those superheroes thoughts that they like, that they want to emulate or play with or play as in the classroom. And through dramatic play, children can enact and transform reality while increasing their cognitive, social literacy, self-regulatory, creative, and emotional skills. And so it is important to help children engage in their dramatic play in your classroom, and they can hopefully then transition that type of play to home as well with their other siblings or other friends outside of the school setting. Okay, so that is chapter 7, ways to develop the dramatic play center. Chapter 8 then talks about developing manipulative and sensory centers in your classroom. So the manipulative and sensory centers really are going to deal a lot with fine motor skills, which are essential and critical for young children to develop. Okay? Fine motor skills are, as I said, critical for everyday activities as well as school success. By the time children reach elementary school, 30 to 60% of their school day is spent participating in fine motor skills or motor tasks. Okay? What are fine motor skills? Things that require small movements of our muscles. And things with our hands and fingers, our toes. Okay, large motor skills are when we move our arms and legs, learn how to walk, etc. Children who have difficulty with fine motor skills sometimes can be teased by classmates, might experience a poor self-concept, and are viewed more negatively by teachers. Hopefully none of you will do that. But children with physical disabilities often struggle in this area as well. Children with ADHD, Down syndrome, and fetal alcohol syndrome also have more fine motor deficits. as well. And so children with these disabilities are at a disadvantage. We have to work more intently with them to help them develop their fine motor skills in order just to stay up or keep up with their classmates. Okay. Handwriting. Okay. Handwriting is often, or it's a skill that we may not use as much, especially as adults. Children do use it from time to time when they're not typing or learning through a screen of some point. But handwriting is an important skill to practice for younger kids to develop fine motor skills. Okay? In a recent study, researchers compared two groups of preschool children. One group practiced learning letters through visual means, and the other group practiced learning recognition through writing. Neuroimaging showed more brain activity for the group that wrote the letters. In other studies, more areas of this brain were activated when writing rather than typing. Still, other research reveals a strong link between fine motor skills and later reading and math achievement. Okay? Brain imaging shows that areas of the brain needed for math, reading, and other cognitive functions are activated when children engage in fine motor skills, suggesting that there may be an underlying neural network used for both fine motor and cognitive skills. And since these skills appear to be strongly linked throughout childhood to improve further reading and math performance, we may want to not only work on cognitive skills, but also enhancing fine motor skills in the early childhood classroom. So connection. So if we think on hands-on learning, that research strongly supports that for younger children, right? So I think we know that, and that we understand that having kids sit down and us talking to them about something and writing things on the board is not the best way for them to learn, right? Especially over an extended period of time. We may have to have them sit down and explain something to them, but for them to actually learn it and remember it and engage in it, getting them active, getting them their fine motor skills engaged is going to be the best way for them to recall that. Okay? So fine motor skills are enhanced in both the manipulative and sensory centers you will have in your classroom. So an effective manipulative center includes a quiet, uninterrupted area for children to work that is well lighted, preferably with natural light. But if you don't have windows in your classroom, then you have to do the best you can. Low open shelves for materials, trays, or baskets to hold all the materials needed for a discrete or a small activity where they have like small pieces. Horizontal and vertical work surfaces, attractive, enticing, diverse materials, and high quality tools, and enough material for 4 to 6 children to have several choices in that center. Okay, so manipulative center, as the name suggests, you got to have materials, you got to have manipulatives in that center. Okay, horizontal and vertical work. Horizontal, of course, is like a flat table, right? And a vertical surface is going to be a board. It's going to be a Promethean board, a wall, some paper, whatever it is that children can do some work there. So a lot of components go into the manipulative center for the children to be active in there. And household items here, examples, can be used effectively, enhancing, enticing, attracting manipulative materials, such as demonstrated here. This is the Waldorf school. I can't remember if this is the school. We talked about this in this class, or it was a different one. Here they have eggshells that they are using, and they have, I can't remember the name of these things, where you can crush up powder and things for cooking. But after these eggshells are crushed, they are used in the garden. Okay? So here they are using these eggshells, probably that they got from making breakfast or whatever it is in the morning. They're crushing them, they're putting them out in the garden. So Waldorf is a very curriculum. It's a very engaged hands-on curriculum for that they use in some preschools. But what's, as you think of other household materials, what are some things that you might be able to use in that manipulation center? And there can be a ton of them that we could potentially think of. So it needs to be material available in the center to enhance each of the following skills. Our pincer pincer grasp, okay, so thumb and index finger, right? Grasping and squeezing, right? So using our hand to grab something, squeeze it together. Bilateral coordination, using both hands together to perform a task. Eye-hand coordination, where we're, catching something, or you're taking something, placing it, a puzzle piece, placing it together. So using visual input to control where you're placing that object. Wrist rotation, wrist stability, finger dexterity, ability to move into individual fingers in isolation, and doing activities with that, and general hand development. So you see these manipulative materials, or these fine motor skills. A lot of it is dealing with our hands and the coordination between our hands and our eyes and some of our other senses as well. So for us as the teachers, to facilitate learning in the manipulative center, we need to introduce new materials. Okay, again, that's a common theme with all of the centers that we're going to talk about. New materials. Okay, not every day, not even every week, but maybe every couple weeks. Okay, and children, if it's new material, children need to learn how to use it and understand what it is before we move on to something different, or add something more to it as well. We need to provide encouragement and recognition to the students, encouraging them that, to continue to use it if they're struggling with the material, recognition of how they're using it, if they're using it appropriately, if they have good ideas on how to use it, etc. Provide challenges, new challenges for them. Teach the correct way to use tools, right? Sometimes they don't know how to use certain things, so the correct way to use tools, hold something, and provide assistance to children who are struggling. Again, we can't just sit back and let things happen and not pay attention. We have to help kids. We have to engage when needed. Scaffold learning, okay, so that's another part, right? We all know about scaffolding learning in terms of when we're teaching maybe an academic subject, right, in a classroom, that we have to start with addition before we go to subtraction, before we go to division and multiplying, and children have to understand that. We need to scaffold our learning in all of our centers as well. Right? We can't throw difficult objects to use in there. If we're using or doing a manipulative center, maybe we don't, and we want to use puzzles, maybe we don't start off with a 500-piece puzzle. Maybe we're going to start off with a wooden puzzle where they put shapes in there, and then we move on from there. That would be scaffolding learning in this instance. Assist with proper positioning. Encourage crossing the midline, okay? So the midline of our body, right? We get, young children are very comfortable in just doing things right on the right side, left on the left side, but getting them to cross over is an important skill to learn, okay? It doesn't seem like it would be for us because we are used to it as adults, but for young children, it's important for them to cross over left to right and understand that. Be aware of the effects of object size, too big or too small, and participate in conversations with children. Okay? Important to share with children and talk to children about what they're doing, why it's important, how they're doing it, the correct way to do it, etc., and reinforcing and supporting them when they're doing things correctly. Okay? So 1/2 inch to 1 inch in size. So children are more likely to use advanced manipulation when the objects are smaller, okay, as compared to when they're too big. Effective sensory areas, now as we shift from manipulative to sensory, effective sensory centers contain a water or media table that is accessible from all sides, with low storage shelves containing a variety of props, smocks, which are coverings, right, for children's clothing, and literacy materials. The center needs to contain an easy to clean floor, which with child-sized cleaning tools. Ideally, it is located near a sink. It's important to meet all safe and health standards, such as draining the water after each group of children is done playing with the media table. Okay? Yeah, important that you don't use the same water over and over every day, because it's going to get dirty. Children's hands will be dirty. There might be some drool. There's all kinds of stuff that can get in there. Okay? Here it's important, children with cuts, scratches, open sores, do not use the table, or if they do, they wear gloves to cover that piece. So the sensory table, when we're talking about water or we're talking about toys that are being used, not just in the sensory table, but in other, the block area and as well. Sanitizing those, whether it's with wipes or sprays. We also have to be careful the types of sprays and wipes that we use to sanitize that it is friendly and won't create issues with children after we clean them off. So we have to be careful with those components. So yeah, avoid materials children might be allergic to when using the cleaning or different materials. With the sensory center, it's not just water, right, that you will use, but you can use things like rice or sand or shells or just different things that kids can feel that are different than what they are maybe used to or what they experience. Okay, so the sensory center can include a lot of different objects for the kids to get a sense of or to get a feel of. Okay? There are many appropriate materials for the sensory center, and kind of got ahead here, but water, sand, dirt, combination of these. I talked about rice. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that you can use. Diverse media allows children to learn different scientific concepts and vocabulary. Example, when playing with water, children have the opportunity to learn that water takes many forms. It flows when it's poured, can dissolve some materials. Some objects float in it while others sink. Some materials absorb water while others are resistant to that. So the sensory area is also a good opportunity for some science skills and development on that as well. And so using a table that you have, a great way to do a variety of things with science, as well as literacy and math. So a good opportunity there. To facilitate learning in the sensory center, we can do a variety of things, extend children's learning. So this happens in every center, right? Where we put a center together, but children might start asking questions. We can extend their learning by providing them some guidance with their questions, right? Create new puzzlements, promote new vocabulary acquisition. So vocabulary is a big component in all kinds of centers. Ask open-ended questions to get them thinking, to come up with answers. Create challenges, facilitate pro-social play, and create limits and simple rules, right? It's important to have some expectations and rules at the center because young kids will get excited. They might go a little bit overboard. We have to make sure we keep that safe for everyone. Okay? Sensory play is very open-ended, right? So it does meet the needs of learners at a variety of different levels. Okay? So, and it's important for children who have sensory integration dysfunction, where they have a difficulty with touch, with other types of senses. And it really can help them to get a sense, I guess, or to see, to feel, to understand what some of those different types of materials are all about. And so chapter 8, sensory and manipulative centers. And I already forgot what chapter 7 was, dramatic play centers. Okay, so those are your two chapters for this week. Work on the 2 quizzes due next Wednesday, the 8th. Wednesday the 2nd at 8 a.m. If you have questions on this week's assignments or these 2 chapters, please reach out and let me know. Otherwise, have a great week and see you next week.